Hello everyone, welcome back to the YouTube channel, and look who's joined me.
I'm Gary Cargill. I'm the Green Party candidate for Norton North at the May 5th elections 2022.
Excellent, and thank you so much for coming out. And I know bloody hell, we're getting attacked by all the wildlife, aren't we? They're saying hello, but I know I've just a disclaimer, this is the first time I've met you, isn't it?
Yep, absolutely. It's the first time that we have met, although I do know of you and about you from other people that you've spoken to within the Green Party and in politics as well, locally. So
Hopefully good things about me.
Yeah. It's nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too. I mean, it's obviously I've seen you on the group, I've seen you on the opposition group, and you've been fighting alongside us, as the Greens have been for so long. Just always active, always engaged, always willing to help us to promote the cause of the development, the opposition to it. So thank you so much.
No problem.
And the one thing I do want to say actually, my mum's walking around in the background there, is thank you to all the people who are behind the camera. It's the first time I've mentioned this because my mum has been helping me. She was there with Andrew Dyer the first time, and Mike Ainsbury, but also to Dave and Harry for helping me as well in the previous time. So thank you for making sure these are going fine. So make sure you do a good job because I want him in a good light. All right.
Thanks, Mum.
Thank you. So okay, because one of the things that I get frustrated about with the edits is that I'm looking back at edits and stuff and going, I didn't pick up on something, so I'm going to try and keep things on topic today and not ramble as much. But one of the main questions I want to ask first is, why the hell are you doing this? Why are you standing for the Green Party? It's such a hard stand, isn't it?
Well, for me, it isn't. It isn't. Do you want me to say that?
No.
Okay.
I'll hold it to you.
Right. For me, it isn't a hard stand at all. You know, it's the only stand that makes any sense. If you live in this ward like I do, if this is your home, if this is your community, then the only viable place for you to stand socially and politically is with the Green Party. You know, we are genuinely a party of the people. We are a member-led party from the bottom up, not top down. We believe in social justice and social equality like no other party, by the way. And beyond that, you know, we believe in environmental protection too. It's about taking care of our people, our communities, and the future of our world. It's about social justice and social equality, but it's about looking after our poorest and most vulnerable in line with the needs of our fragile but beautiful planet, which is exactly what it is. And we are not serving the people as it stands right now here in Halton Council or in Norton North. And we know that from the development that's taken place, and we know that from the climate emergency that was declared by Halton Council in 2019, a climate emergency that they failed to deal with at all. They have no written plan or agenda. It's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. I was a member of the Labour Party for many, many years.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. Where did this come from? This passion that you've clearly got in spades, more than anyone I've interviewed so far. You've got an anger behind your words here. What's driving that anger, and why did you defect from Labour support?
Well, I mean, like, I have to be really careful. I wouldn't define it as anger, but I do define it as passion, and I do define it as absolutely caring about the community that I live in, my neighbours, my family, and the people that I love. Okay, and where does it come from? Well, look, I grew up. I've always been political, so I grew up in a political household. Thank God, I grew up in a political household. I've been a member of the Labour Party practically all my life. From the age of about 6 years of age, I was going round doors in Mershaw, you know, and kind of knocking on doors at election time, or delivering leaflets with me parents and the rest of my family and other members of the Labour Party. I've been a member of the Labour Party pretty much all of my adult life, actively attending meetings and things. And the reason why I'm a Green is because I believe in social justice.
The Labour Party believe in social justice.
It's absolute nonsense. And if you ask any member of the Labour Party, well, what do the Labour Party really believe in? And I know you asked Jeff. Yeah. They will just say glibly, with their eyes moving around the room, social justice. Well, what does that mean? I mean, what does that mean? Seriously, what does that mean? And they think they've got the goods on that, or they lay claim to that, but they absolutely don't.
Yeah, one of the questions I picked up on with that interview with Jeff was, so where does the Labour Party actually stand on these issues?
I think that was your question. As I said, I did have a look. I kind of dipped in and out of it, of the interview, so I haven't seen it all. And if there's anything that I say wrong, then I ask for forgiveness on that, because I was busy. But no, they don't know where they stand. And I think you asked them where you stand with Keir Starmer. Well, listen, one of the things for me was, as a member of the Labour Party, and I promise you this is the case, it is so toxic an environment. You'd be sat in meetings, and before I'd enter a meeting, there'd be people who'd grab you outside and they'd say, listen, we're going to vote this way or that way because we're going to get that person, because that person's been plotting with that person and they're trying to remove so-and-so. So what we're going to do is we're going to vote against them on this one. And then, you've got people calling each other right-wingers, you've got people calling each other communists or Trotskyites, and the whole thing was incredibly toxic. And actually, we should be united on the things, the common ground that defines us, not the differences that divide us. Because what really matters at the end of the day are the people and the future of the world for our children growing up.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason why I made the change. But also, there was something kind of deeply personal that happened to me in 2018. And I describe it as a magical event. I become a father for the first time. I become a dad, and with that came this huge responsibility. And I began to kind of just sit and creatively imagine what the world might look like for Joe, my son, when he's my age. What the world might look like for Joe's children. And it is an incredibly bleak picture indeed. And, we mentioned briefly the climate crisis, and also the fact that the Halton Council have declared a climate emergency, and it's something that they've done nothing with since 2019. They haven't even got an action plan. Yeah. There's one in development now, but what have they been doing? No. Apart from selling off our green fields that were being primed for developments and hiding behind a document from 1971. It's just...
Well, this is the thing. I did pull up the Environment Agency, the developers and Halton Borough Council about their stand on the climate emergency and why they're building on places that could capture the carbon, and plus not just the green space itself, but the infrastructure that we've got. It just isn't there currently for the current population, yet they want to add to the current population with more. So this is the thing, where do they sit on it? And they don't sit anywhere, they just go, we're looking at it.
They've been told what to say. That's the thing. Now, the problem with the Labour Party as well, and the Labour Council, the Labour-dominated council, is that a Labour councillor cannot vote against the will of the Labour group. Okay, so they have to put that before the voice of the community, the people who put them into power. All right.
Yeah.
As an elected member of the chamber, you are there as the voice of the people who put you there. You're a public servant. You're there to serve them. That's what you're supposed to be doing. And they won't vote against the will of the Labour group. They have a whipping system that whips them into line. They can abstain, I think, but they can't vote against it. And so, one of the reasons why I could never stand as a Labour councillor, I just couldn't do it. Yeah. Back to me and my history. I was brought up with a social conscience. And that social conscience drives me now in making the changes to try and create a fairer, more equal, cleaner, greener society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
And it's the thing, when you say that, I believe it. I absolutely believe that that's what you believe, whereas other potential candidates, they say it as a way of getting the vote, as a way of feeling like they're being virtuous, when they're not actually. It's not something they actually believe.
No, I mean, not at all. And I think a calling to public office is exactly that. It is a calling, all right? It's something that it hurts you to sit still, okay? Yes. The easiest thing for me in the world would be to stand as a Labour candidate. and get onto the council and then be unable to truly adequately represent the people because I'd have to vote with the Labour group.
Yeah.
That would be the easy thing to do. But how am I affecting change and change for the better? Because and this is a really serious point. We are 22 years now into this century, and we have had 21 of the hottest years on record. Okay, that's no coincidence. It's no coincidence that a climate crisis has been declared in every single council across the Liverpool City region. It's no coincidence that it's been declared here in Halton in 2019. And the fact that they've so shambolically and lazily approached that crisis is something that drives me into action.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Because somebody needs to stand up and point the finger and say, what are you doing? What have you been doing? I mean, can I ask you the question? What does emergency mean to you?
Well, it means run.
It means now, right?
Yeah.
What does crisis mean?
As it sounds like there's something going on that needs to be addressed.
They've identified that it is going on because they declared it, but they've done absolutely nothing about it, and they're still selling off our precious and irreplaceable green fields. Once that land is gone, it's gone. That's it. It cannot be replaced. Okay, it's really important. It's really important. We cannot glibly say, well, there's a document here from 1971 that says, in principle, this land is primed for development. And you can't really argue with that because it's a principle. Well, of course you can argue with a principle. You can certainly argue with principles from the 1970s, surely.
Well, and surely that principle can be changed, because that's one of the issues that I saw in the edit, was that I didn't quite get that out. That the point of what I'm making is that consultations have already happened, and we've all been there. There's no information coming out of those consultations because they don't expect anyone to object to it properly. They just want to push it through, and then all we're getting is, well, you're going to get them anyway. Just give up.
Yeah, it is disgraceful. If it's not stupidity, it's absolute ineptitude.
Yeah.
And I'm being kind. I really am being kind when I say that. If we look at and I think it was Jeff who said, and forgive me if I've got it wrong, but I think it was Jeff who said, well, it's just a principle. Until there's an actual plan for what the development might look like, you can't really argue with the principle. Well, you can argue with the principle. You've declared a climate emergency in 2019, which gives you the license to change the way that you do things, the way that we live. It's about you taking action. That's what it's about.
As a social justice advocate, someone who wants balance, who wants, like Rich said to me in a new interview coming out today, he said all the Green Party stand for balance and equality and social justice. And to me, saying that it's a principle from years ago that we can't do anything about until it's more or less there, it's passing the buck, isn't it?
Well, the world has changed dramatically, hasn't it, since 1971. Let's look at the principles of 1971 for a moment then, shall we? I mean, the world has moved on massively, hasn't it, in terms of its equality of sexuality, of gender. It's moved on massively in terms of race, human rights, equal rights. The principles of the 1970s do not apply now, and it is the same for the physical world as well. Yeah. I moved to Norton North when I was 11 years of age. Okay, it was 1984. I moved to Farnell Close, do you know it?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's where I grew up, Farnell Close. Okay, so this is my home, this is my community. When I moved into Farnell Close, opposite me was, guess what it was? It was a field. It was a rich and beautiful green field, and in that field was a horse.
Yeah.
And we call that field the horse's field, because as far as we were concerned, that's who lived there, that's who it belonged to. It belonged to nature. That field is now where Wolverton Drive is, and Mellor Close, and all those. So everywhere was green. Everywhere was green. So if that patch of land in 1981, in principle, was primed for development, that's because there was so much green space, and now we have none left. None left. And to sell off and build on the last vestige of wilderness that we have is scandalous, especially when this council has declared a climate emergency that they are not dealing with.
Yeah.
They're writing a proposal now, and they declared the emergency in 2019. So what have they been? What have they been doing?
Well, they'll just use COVID as the big precursor.
No, look, I'm really sorry, because this is from the Runcorn World. Just bear with me 1 second.
Okay.
This is from the Runcorn World. You have to have a plan in place. Fundamentally, you have to have a plan in place. Let me ask you this, right? Let's just say you're at home. Mum, you can answer this. Let's just say you're at home and you're watching, I'd say, the footy, okay? And a small fire breaks out in your kitchen. What do you do? Do you sit there and do you go, I'll wait till half time. It's only a small fire.
Yeah.
Would you get up and you deal with it now because you know the fire is going to escalate, and it will get worse, and potentially the people that you love may die. And that's what we're dealing with. You get up and you deal with it now. You don't declare a climate emergency and then do nothing. And then when the heat is on or you're under some kind of scrutiny, you suddenly begin to produce a document that is gonna, that is going to give people some idea of how you're going to deal with the crisis. That is an escalating crisis. It's not at a snail's pace. It's escalating like a fire. It'll get worse, much, much worse. Let me read you this. This is in the Runcorn World. Halton Council, this is recently, this is in the last few weeks. Halton Council has been rated 0 out of 100 by a campaign group because it does not have a formal plan to tackle climate change. But the authority claims that it is taking significant action to reduce carbon emissions. Now, this is by the Climate Emergency UK, okay, and they tested every single council that they could, all right, and they scored 409 local authorities in the UK to test the robustness of their climate action plans, right, and what their strategic frameworks are, right, and of the 409 councils, 84, including Holton, were deemed not to have a climate action plan in place. It's disgraceful. It's disgraceful. And so if that doesn't, and this is what happens when one single party has so much power, is that they can sit back on their laurels, they can take the vote for granted, and they do very little. And when they're pressed, or at election time, they'll come out and they'll start kind of showing some green credentials, but they don't know what it means. They don't know what it means. If you want green, the only way you're going to get green is to vote green. And if you want social justice, the only true way you're going to get it is to vote green, because we believe in taking care of the poorest, the most vulnerable, in line with the needs of the planet. It's that simple. You can't do it any other way.
Yeah. Well, we've already tried the same way for how many years since? Because every year people vote the same in Halton through fear or comfort or whatever it is. So, are you hoping that the Greens can come in and then start pointing fingers and going, right, this is what we want you to do? What power have you got to change stuff in the council?
Well, look, we're already doing that. We now have Green representation on the council, which is fantastic. And I know that you've been working with Andrew Dyer, and I know that the people in Norton North and Sandymore and Warford and Daresbury have been working with Andrew Dyer very, very closely, and he has become a strong voice that has held the Labour Council to task.
Yeah, he's been a really good sort of anchor for everything that we've done, because he's turned up for the events we've held, he's turned up for any sort of publicity and like interviews, but he's also been a thorn in the side to the council, who are going, right, developments, yay, and he's going, no. So he's been really good, and having more like him, such as yourself, Rich, who is very methodical, would be a welcome change in Halton, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it is. Interesting you should mention Rich being methodical. He is very methodical. I'm passion and heart, and he is.
The stuff he was coming out with on the interview, it's so great. His ideas, like having not an appeals, but when you put a planning application through, and it should always be rejected first, with the public then proving that we need it, rather than us having to object to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
So
very
so basically, the idea is when a planning application comes in, we would seek people's approval rather than just wait for somebody to get wind of it and then object.
Yeah, because then
It would need-
everything's always rejected until you can prove that it actually will benefit the borough.
And this is the wonderful thing about the Green Party. What that is, it's asking for public participation in their
Yes.
politics. You know, and I mean, I've been political all my life, and I know that a lot of people are disenfranchised from politics, largely because they feel as if everyone is all the same. But genuinely, and I mean this from the heart, the Green Party are different. We believe in people participatory politics. We want you to be participants in your politics, not just passengers. And so it is about community engagement. It is about being the voice for the community in that council chamber and standing up and saying no. The wonderful thing about the party is no matter how big we get, we don't have a whipping system. Yeah. And that means that our votes cannot be whipped into line. It means that we can stand and we can do exactly that. We can form bonds and relationships with other councillors who may have other colours, be it red, blue, yellow, whatever. If we can unite on the common ground that defines us, you know, and I would say, well, every single Labour councillor should be looking at this development here and saying this is ludicrous.
What's the worst thing about it? What's the worst thing? Let's talk about the opposition now focally. What is your main problem with it, and do you want any part of it to go ahead or none of it at all?
No, none of it at all. I mean, I think we are, as a society, we are lurching from crisis to crisis, aren't we? The economy is in crisis. We have this fuel crisis that has just developed. We're living through a health crisis, the global pandemic, and there is the climate crisis. Something is wrong with the way that we're doing things. We need to change how we live. If there is one thing that the global pandemic has taught us, those horrendous lockdowns that we all went through, if there's one thing that taught us, it's just how important and how precious our vital green spaces to our communities, so that they had a place that they could escape into to release the stresses and strains of daily life. People stepped into nature for the first time for their daily walk, and they communed with nature in a new way. I mean, we've got a beautiful day here. We've got kids out playing. We've got the birds in the trees. And when I grew up, all of Norton North was pretty much like this, all of it. And now we have that postage stamp of space, right, that surrounds Norton North, just at the back there.
You're talking about specifically Walford Farm.
Yeah, Walford Farm. Yeah. And once it's, because Sandymore, the development of Sandymore has just been so aggressive and big. I mean, I know Jeff lives there. He said, didn't he? You know, he said, well, I live in Sandymore, so I'm in a bit of an awkward position because I've got my house.
Well, so does Andrew. So did Andrew at that point, and he was still coming out vocally against any further attachment to that development.
It doesn't make any. I mean, you right. I think the key thing is, and I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it. It's irreplaceable, and therefore it's precious. Once it's gone, that's it. It's gone. Just think about that for a moment, and because if people don't live in the area or in the ward, they might just think, you know, but
NIMBYs.
It's such a crucial part of land, you know, for those people that live in and around the community. You know, it's really, really important that we do everything we can to fight it off and not hide behind historical documents from 1971 that say glibly, in principle, this land can be primed for development. It's not okay. It's not okay.
This is the point I made to the Environment Agency when they had their meeting at the Parish Council in Sandymore. One of my questions was, COP26 had just happened and this and that and the other, and their stand on it was to protect places like that, but they're actively engaged in helping Homes England to produce this land for development, or at least mitigate the problems that come with it. And I said, well, which is your stand? Which you stand? And I do understand they've had the funding cut and things are harder, but this is, like you say, precious now, and it needs protected now. I mean, they just stood around, got empty platitudes about we've mitigated flood problems and stuff like that. But look at the Keckwick already. It's already overflowing and all the houses haven't been built yet.
Yeah. Well, it's floodplain. I mean, it's floodplain, so it's going to need even more structural engineering in order to make the land safe, if you can do it at all. But let's not sit off on the hope that actually the land probably couldn't be developed on anyway. They're doing tests on it now. Let's stand with the community, shoulder to shoulder with the people who live there, who voted for the councillor in that chamber, to have a voice in that chamber for them. Let's stand with them and let's say, no, absolutely not. This is all that we have left. In 1971, this was all fields. So if you've identified a stretch of land and say that, well, that is okay to develop on, it's because there was maybe more of an abundance of green space. Definitely more an abundance of green space. But now there isn't. There's nothing there. There's nothing left, and this is it.
Well, Daresbury's slowly getting built on right now as we speak, and you can see it's heartbreaking. I'm glad I'm moving away from it now, because you can see the view from my old house, and it's diggers digging away, chipping at the green, and it's upsetting to me. And that's what got me involved, because I kept seeing for 2 or 3 years, Homes England, everywhere you go, private land. What do you mean private land? And this, the good thing that Jeff brought up was that it's ours, that they're accountable to us, and at no point have we been asked in a referendum, small, I don't know if referendums count in local authorities, but at any point in voting do we ever got asked, do you want this to go ahead? At any point, it's just, yeah, we're doing it.
Well, this is the thing, and this is about, and this is why I really, really love what you're doing, Stephen, with this, because anyone who can engage the electorate and bring their politics onto their phones or into their front rooms, you're doing a wonderful service, a wonderful job.
Thank you.
No, you really, really are, because I think one of the greatest shames for me, and is the fact that so many people don't vote, and they don't vote because they don't believe that it will make a difference, it will make a change. Trust me, it can. We have got fabulous green councillors now throughout the Liverpool City region. We've got green representation now in Halton. We are the fastest growing party in the UK, and if you believe in social justice and social equality, join us. If you believe in environmental protection, join us. There is nothing that any of the other parties can possibly offer that can match what we want to do. And above all, it's about making you, the people, participants in your politics. I found myself in a position when I joined the Green Party, and I'd not been in the party long, where it was suggested that I stand for the Green Metro Mayor role for the Liverpool City region. Right. So I stood against Steve Rotherham in that election as the Green Party candidate, which covers a massive area. It's 1.6 million people. And one of the things, and it's a Green Party policy nationally, is that we want to bring the people with us and engage them in our politics. We want to create these citizens' assemblies where we engage the third sector and faith-based groups and charities like Windmill Hill Big Local and St. Bert's here, and so that the legislation that comes into the council, they have an opportunity to meet as an assembly. They understand the vulnerabilities in their own communities, the people that they are the most needy. They understand where the problems are in their communities. They can then, at this assembly, scrutinise the legislation and work out what the priorities are for them, for their communities, for their families and the people that they love. Yeah. And that's part of what we want to do, and it's a national policy of ours to create these citizens' assemblies, so that it isn't just about, the councillor will go and he'll speak for the people, he'll be their voice in the legislative chamber, the lawmaking chamber locally. That's what he should be doing anyway, or they should be doing anyway. But also, it's about creating these citizens' assemblies where community groups can come together and then they can scrutinise the legislation that directly affects them. And feed that back to the council before anything is ratified.
And that's at a city region level.
Just push through. Well, that's at a city region level, but it would have to work locally. It has to work locally. It has to be local. So that's the thing. Because
that's the one question you asked about the city region, and I've been throwing it out there about the change becoming more as part of the city region, more integrated, more facilities, more. What does that mean for Runcorn? Because there has been an identity crisis with Runcorn for so long, because the council just don't have a vision for Runcorn in particular. I don't know about Widnes because I'm not from there, But it seems to me that no plan benefits Runcorn to the nth degree. It seems to be like mismanaged here and there. So my main question to Jeff and all the other candidates was, shall we just go all out and just completely get involved with the city region and bring it in?
Are you asking about the relevance of the Liverpool City region to our
yes,
people
because a lot of
and to
people
our
just
locals?
don't understand what the Liverpool City region does for Runcorn and what it entails. Do we become a city, part of the city, or is it just a collaboration between boroughs?
No, I mean what it is the Liverpool City region. It's an assembly, okay, where there are 6 boroughs. So you've got Halton, St Helens, Knowsley, Liverpool, Sefton, and Wirral, okay, who are all part of the Liverpool City region. Now, what used to happen was governments would make decisions for these areas, and they would have a pot of money for these areas and dish that money out. But they're miles away from the problem. So the idea is that money goes locally. So it goes to the region itself. So it goes to the Liverpool City region, which I think. Yeah, so it goes to the Liverpool City region. I think the problem might be in the word Liverpool for some areas. It doesn't make us Liverpool.
No,
it just makes us.
Well,
In the
the problem I had wasn't
Manchester.
Liverpool. It's the urbanisation of Runcorn, in a sense, because like we're seeing right now, the developments are going right up to the boundary of Liverpool City region. So to me, it's like, are we becoming as part of the city and becoming an urban centre, or are we continuing to be like a rural country?
Well, I mean, I think basically the problem there is if there's any green space anywhere, they'll sell it and they'll develop on it. And what will happen in the end is there will be a conurbation whereby towns link up with towns, just kind of blend into each other and merge into each other. And that's just what will happen if you keep selling off the green space in between different areas, different communities. We will just blend into one. I mean, where is Norton North going to end? Where does Sandymore begin? You know, it's just
Even Sandymore, Darsby, Moor, and
then
Warrington.
It's
all closing in more and more, isn't it?
But in terms of the Liverpool City region, it's about bringing the money closer to where the problems are.
I like that.
Because we understand locally, we understand the problems better than people in Westminster. We understand what the needs are better than in Westminster, and we understand how difficult the changes are in terms of infrastructure changes that we'll need to make.
We definitely need, because this is the one thing I do like about the city region, the transport issue is so vital now. We need proper connectivity to the city and to other areas, and we just don't have it at the moment, especially with buses.
It's horrendous, and I do think Steve Rotherham is miles away in terms of what he believes is actually going on at the moment in terms of our connectivity to other parts of. I mean, I found myself in an ITV debate with him, right, and there was just me and him, because like a lot of that campaign, the Liberal Democrats couldn't be bothered to turn up, and neither could the Tories. So it was just
familiar.
it was just me and him, mano a mano, just having this conversation. And he was asked, what do you think about your transport links? And he went, oh, they're brilliant, they're great, because he lives on a main line that will take him from his house. In fact, I think he said, I've given up my car now and everything's public transport, and I think he lives on a main line that'll take him from his house directly into where he works. And I said, well, it's horrendous. I mean, for example, I asked him, how long do you think it will take me to get from my house in Runcorn on a bus to go and see friends or family in, say, Page Moss in North Liverpool? How long? I'd have to pack 2 packed lunches in order to get there. I'd be out for hours and hours and hours when I can get there in half an hour in a car, you know. And if we're living in a world and we're truly addressing the climate emergency, we need to start giving people alternatives to just jumping in their car and going going from A to B to C. We need to be giving people viable alternatives.
Well, there's been lots of funding coming because of the city region status. There's been a lot of funding coming and improving bits and bobs in Runcorn, which I've noticed, like the cycle lanes that are going up around the city and stuff like that. So if there's anything that Runcorn's crying out for, what do you think it is?
Well, I mean, I if I look at Norton North as a microcosm of Runcorn, all right, it's a great shame to me that we have nothing really that engages our young people, and that gives opportunity to our old people as well. Nothing really at all. We've got this community centre in Windmill Hill called Priory View, which is closed most of the, and it would be fantastic to work with Big Local and with other councillors in the ward to try and get that moving in a big way. You know, where young and old people alike, as a thriving community hub where young and old people alike can come together, you know, and be part of activities, sometimes together, yes, where they can learn respect for each other, where young people understand the value of old people, where old people begin to understand young people. We can channel their energies into supporting each other and create a dynamic community hub where we have drama classes and acting classes for old people, not just young people.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
I'd be all up for that.
so there's plenty that we can do. It involves engaging the third sector, faith-based groups, charities, because there isn't the money available for youth workers nowadays. Yeah. But it kills me, the lack of opportunity that there is for our young people today, and they get blamed for so much. But where are the youth workers now? They're not there anymore because of the cuts. You know, where are the community centres, the vibrant community centres? I grew up in this area, as I say. I live here now, and I was socialised in our community centres and youth groups, you know, and it's left its mark on me. My son will be, you know, but he doesn't have the green space that I had to go and explore and play in and be creative in. He doesn't have anything like that at all, and he won't have. So
there's your worry there, because you want exactly the same of the best part of your childhood for your son.
Yeah.
And you don't have that. And it's the same with my kids, because my mum took me to drama classes every week down in the old town, Waterloo Centre. It's closed now, boarded up, but they don't have that anymore.
No.
And even if they do, it's all corporatised. It's all, you know, you must pay £60 per to make this. No, £1 a session, good enough. Yeah. But you have to go to Liverpool City Centre for that. Yeah. For most of those little groups now. So what you're saying is we need proper facilities for young people.
We do, and we need, you know, guidance, opportunity, educational facilities for young people where they can go and be creative and learn to discover themselves. It doesn't matter where you come from, and this is what I genuinely believe. It doesn't matter too much where you come from. But if you can send your children out into the world with confidence, then the talents will take care of themselves. And at the moment, we're not doing that at all. And there is no facility for us to do it, or plan in place for us to do that, I would say. And, you know, like the third sector, Big Local, all those groups try, they really try, but they're limited by what they can do. And so, you know, this is the future of our world, and we can't just negate it. So I would like to see if there's a way around to circumnavigate some of the obstacles that are in place, and it will require, I think, engaging, you know, people who believe strongly in their community and about bringing that word back, society back to you know, the forefront of how we live and where we live.
Yeah, I think the one thing that Jeff brought up actually was the presence of social media in harming the development of children, and harming stuff. But I believe it's useful to a point, but you've got to know how to switch it off. But tell me about your stand on that, because it was an interesting point you made about the development of children and safeguarding children.
No, children need to be safeguarded, especially if they can be communicated to by, like, people outside of their safety net, their safety bubble. I mean, that's just for standard. But that comment sounds like somebody who doesn't understand social media, and I think the problem with social media is that children are open to influences of extreme views and extreme degrees, but and groupthink. Okay, but those things, I think those things can exist anyway. YouTube is a phenomenal, for example, if we class YouTube as social media, YouTube is it's like a library in itself. It's a phenomenal educational tool where you can research pretty much anything and everything that you'd like, including, if you Google Runcorn in the 1970s, you'll get wonderful montages of the place.
I was watching one last night.
It looking quite pristine and beautiful, and it just goes to show just how the world has changed from then till now, which drives me back to this hiding behind a document from 1971, you know, that basically says, oh, this land in principle is prime for development. It's just, it's nonsense. And levelling up is really important as well. It's important to all Greens. It's important that we try and give, we believe in protecting the poorest and most vulnerable in line with the needs of our planet, but in order to do that, it is about giving people the opportunities for education, for development, you know. And so I know in terms of social media that things hit me and I find new things and new ideas. I think Sandy Moore and Warford came because somebody got in touch with me from on Twitter and basically said, in November this was, I think, it might have been a bit earlier, and basically said, can you lend your voice to this, you know? And
Yeah, because I started getting involved in, is it August of I can't remember, August last year was it? Because I saw the plans, the blueprint for Sandy Moore Walford, and I just had enough. It got to me, so I made a YouTube video about it. And you said about the power of YouTube. It went really well. The video went really well. Then got an interview with Mike. Then got an interview, and it started the ball rolling on this big group that we have now on Facebook. And we talk about the margins of voting. Very, very low margins in some areas. Andrew got voted in by a margin of 20 votes. And you're like, and we've got 600 people on Facebook. So that's a powerful tool, isn't it?
yeah, no, it's an incredibly powerful tool, and I think anything that can engage the electorate, and you're trying to, I think is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to I've worked with Mike Lee on Peterloo. I played John Smith, who's the editor of the Liverpool Mercury that day, and he was on the hustings that day. And so I did quite a lot of work on basically the whole kind of build up to Peterloo, and at that point, and this is a really important point, you know, whatever you decide to do on May the 5th, please just go out and vote. Just go out and vote. You know, I don't vote Green, please. That would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be a start.
But whatever you decide to do, please just go out and vote and exercise your power. You have a voice, and your voice is your vote. So, you know, make sure that you go out and exercise that voice, your democratic right to make a change in your world. Because just to go back to the Peterloo thing,
Yeah.
at that time, the only people who could vote were landowners. Okay, you had to own land in order to vote at that time. All right, you couldn't change the way that you live, the world that you live in. You had no democratic voice at all, no opportunity to make a change or have your say at all, unless you owned land.
Yeah.
And you could only stand for Parliament if you owned even more land. So you had a situation where landowners were voting for landowners,
Yeah.
and nobody else could speak. And so there was a rise in, like, people were persuaded by the power of democracy and that they wanted to have their say and they wanted to have their vote, and they marched in the name of universal suffrage, the opportunity to vote, and were absolutely massacred on that day.
Sorry, we'll pick up on that point in a minute. Just the train went past then. You know, the little miniature train.
Yeah, it goes around the town park, doesn't it?
I'm supposed to be doing a documentary about them in a few weeks.
Oh, cool.
With a drone and everything. That's gonna be great.
Yeah, ace.
So let's pick up what you just said again, just before the noise came up.
Okay, so basically, I mean, Peterloo came about because at that time the only people who had the opportunity to vote were landowners, and the only people who could stand for Parliament were people who owned even more land. So you had a situation where landowners were voting for landowners, and
Yes.
nobody else had a say, and the people were starving. So what they did was they marched in the name of universal suffrage, that is, so everybody has the opportunity to vote, the right to make their voice clear, their democratic voice clear in the ballot box on voting day. And they were massacred by the King's army. They were cut down, men, women and children. They bled the ground red, so that we, people like me and Stephen and Mum here, have the opportunity to vote, to go out and make a change for the future of our world, our communities, our families, and the people that we love. And so whatever you do on May the 5th, please just go out and exercise that vote.
And even if it's a postal vote, because I know postal votes are being posted on the 19th, is it, or 21st?
Yeah. The majority of people that you'll find, or votes you'll find, are probably those postal votes, because what you know about postal votes is that people are more inclined to vote if they've asked for a postal vote.
Yes, they're more engaged with that system. I mean, the one thing I mentioned to Rich was that I spoilt my ballot for 2 years because I didn't know who the hell to vote for.
No, but you're exercising a political opinion.
Yes, I'm still doing it, yeah.
Here's the thing, and this kind of divides people, and it certainly divides people in the Green Party, but it's actually illegal not to vote in Australia. You don't find a great deal of money, like 15 quid, 20 quid or something like that. But you find, because people died for the vote, people gave their lives so that you'd have an opportunity to make a change. And for that reason, if you don't go out and exercise your vote, then there is a small fine that comes in line with that. Now, if it takes that, I'm all for that. And people might hate me for it, but I believe passionately that for the people that have gone before and for the future generations that are to come, it's important that we exercise our votes now. Yeah. And we teach our children that it's important that they too have rights and have an opportunity to make changes to the world that the people that have gone before didn't and died in order so that they could. And
it's more crucial now, especially in Halton, more than ever. I think this is it, really, isn't it? We need to get this change now.
So absolutely spot on, really. And it's so important to me that you go out and vote. Please vote Green. It'd be amazing if you did. There's an awful lot for us to fight for, and there's an awful lot for us to change. And we'll do it together. We'll do it side by side, shoulder to shoulder. This is my home, this is my community as much as it is yours. And when I speak, it will be your voice that will echo around that council chamber. I promise you that,
Exactly, it will, because I can tell you'll be one of these people that goes into a room and goes, right, this is how it's getting done. This is what I want to see. Yeah. Maybe not as methodical as Richard, but you'll be definitely like, if you're the voice, he's the planner, if you get me.
I think there are very few people in the world who are more methodical than Richard. He's brilliant in that way,
Talking about Richard, then, because he's got such a plethora of stuff he likes to do. Tell me about your interests and what you do personally. What's your passion?
Well, like my passion at the moment is to be honest with you, it's my family, it's my kid. When you have and it was just a massive epiphany for me. It changed the way I operated in the world, And so I've got a wonderful partner, and she has my life planned in terms of we're out. It was a farm yesterday planting veg with Joe, who's 3. We go out and we visit all our community events, and we're always doing something or something. And so at the moment, it's about watching this kid grow and his development. And he was born with a few problems. He was born with an Erb's palsy to begin with, and so
explain that to me. What's that?
Yeah, well, I mean. And this is the thing, when I, in preparation for to play John Smith in Peterloo, I went and interviewed various different people who'd been moved into politics, or to operate in a way where politics kind of defines their past or their future in some way. And so I interviewed lots of people, and I think to a man, pretty much like you, I was the interviewer, but like you, one of my questions was, what is it? What's the single most life-affirming moment, or something was the question.
Broad range question.
Yeah, and I think to a man, because they were all men that I interviewed, because I was playing a man, so I interviewed men, and that was just the way I chose to do it. They all said the birth of my child, it was so magical. And so when I had that wonderful moment when my partner come out of a bathroom with one of those urination sticks with 2 lines on it and went like this, yeah. I was looking forward. I was really looking forward to this magical moment where the birth of my child, and we kept the sex secrets because it added to the magic of it all, the mystery of it all for us, not for everyone, but for us. And it was the most violent thing I think I've ever witnessed in my entire life. It was horrendous.
Childbirth, you mean?
Well, he got stuck in the birth canal. It was a 5-day labour. She was induced because of her age, and he got stuck in the birth canal, and it was like cutting her with ventouse and forceps, and it was just a really violent and bloody affair. And
It makes you appreciate what women really go through, don't it?
horrendous, mate. Honestly, my admiration, I'm an absolute feminist anyway. You know, I categorise myself as a feminist, but I mean, just her fortitude and her strength, and to right now, even to this day, her fortitude and strength as a mother is just incredible. But he got stuck. Long story short, he got stuck in the birth canal, and that meant that his arm, the brachial plexus, which is a series of nerves here, was severed, and that meant that his arm was twisted, and so we're still under a consultant surgeon, and we will be until he's 4 or something. We've got a few more meetings. Fortunately, he's not had to have surgery, but we've had incredible support from Alder Hay and from Halton as well. Wonderful physiotherapy and stuff from the NHS, and so he is developing. He's also on the watch list for a load of other things as well, you know, ASD and stuff.
That's so much of a worry for you as a parent, as someone. It's in what you put in context with future as well, with what you've been talking about today. It's just added to that pressure, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's just, I don't know, none of it's a pressure. It's the weird thing is that the pressure is the stress of worrying, will he be okay?
As a parent,
are we going to get through the next? When are we going to get the next breakthrough? You know, kind of thing. But beyond that, as long as I can help him, my job really is to develop him and to, like your mum does with you, is to fill him full of confidence, and as my mum did to me, fill me full of confidence, and then send me out into the world where my talents will take care of themselves. And that's exactly what I'll do for him, and it's exactly what we should be doing for all of our young people in our community, and
opening the doors and letting them walk through them.
Exactly. And our politics should be open and transparent.
Yes.
You know, and people should be absolute participants in that politics. And the reason why people have turned away from politics, in terms of voting figures that you've just been talking about, and I know we're going around in circles, is that they don't feel that they're participants in their politics. They really don't. They don't feel as if they count or they make a change, and you really do. They do. They absolutely do. Your vote counts. Go out and use it. And it's very difficult. I understand habitual voting patterns. I was a member of the Labour Party most of my life, and had an awakening where I realised actually the Labour Party doesn't know what it stands for anymore. The Liberal Democrats don't know what they stand for, and the proof of that was jumping into bed with the Conservatives at the first available opportunity.
For power.
And the Labour Party are now on a merry dance into the centre right for power.
Yeah.
You know, I think you asked the Labour candidate what his views were on Keir Starmer, and I think he said, well, he wants to get elected. They don't know what they are. They really don't. They morph consistently from what they allege, grotesquely from one thing to the next in the pursuit of power. And the reason why they're not in power is because they don't understand. Nobody knows what they stand for because they don't understand what they stand for themselves. When you asked, did the Labour candidate, did he believe in Keir Starmer? He said, well, he wants to get elected. Keir Starmer won't get elected, in my view, because he's a complete charisma vacuum.
He's a black hole.
He's an empty space. He spent all of his tenure as leader of the Labour Party, if not suspending people and accusing them of being racists and things. But if he spent his time trying to define, and he's used that to define who he's not. So in doing that, he's saying, I'm not Jeremy Corbyn. And then he spent the next couple of years going, well, I'm not Boris Johnson. Well, who are you? That's the thing. We don't know who you are. We don't know what you stand for. You started doing interviews with The Sun, and we know that I'm talking to Keir Starmer now, weirdly, but we know,
there, by the way.
we know that he is trying to reshape the party to drag it into the centre and centre right ground.
Oh, centre right ground.
Well, that's where they'll end up going. because they want to court Middle England, because that's the only way that they believe that they will be electable, and he's wrong in that, but that's what he believes. And the last time the Labour Party went on this merry dance to the centre ground or to the centre right, it was horrendous. It was horrendous. I mean, look at what they did. If you ask anyone from the Labour Party what they did with power, then they'll say things like, oh, well, Sure Start was great, but then look at the other stuff that was done. They introduced tuition fees for our children, right, saddling them with a lifetime's worth of debt, you know, which they'll struggle to pay off throughout their lives. They introduced part privatisation into the NHS. It was called PPI, part private investment. They introduced private companies, private investment into the NHS instead of borrowing it from the public purse and pay it off. And we will be paying off that debt to private companies for decades and decades to come. They introduced a ream of anti-trade union legislation designed to hamper our working men and women from withdrawing their labour when working conditions become unstable, unsafe, and their pay and conditions are also compromised. It's horrendous. And then, I mean, let's not forget this. They took us into a succession of wars, not just a war, but a succession of wars of dubious legality, you know, spending hundreds of billions of pounds on bombs in places like Afghanistan, which has just gone back to what it was before we started. This is not a party that has got the goods on social justice. And if you ask anyone from the Labour Party what they really stand for, and they just say social justice, ask them what they mean, because that isn't social justice. And if that's what becoming electable is, then I'm sorry, the only people who are going to pay the price are the people. Yeah. And
it's that lack of vision again. It's the same with the Halton Borough Council. It's that lack of vision and planning that's got us where we are now, not just locally but nationally. And they're only caught in social justice is because the media and the country, every country in the world is wrestling with that question right now. They're jumping on a bandwagon. Whereas I genuinely believe as individuals you really want social justice, because that's why you're in the Green Party.
Well, exactly. So, you know, it's the Labour Party have got this thing where it's like, oh, but we're the party of social justice. No, you're not. You're absolutely not. I mean, the proof is in your record. Look at the record. I look back at my time in the Labour Party, and this is why I know it's so difficult to change your voting habits and your voting allegiance. I look back at my time in the Labour Party, and I just wonder, now that I'm in the Greens, I wonder why I was there for so long. Why? So out of touch. I mean,
Choice maybe?
Even with power, the Labour Party, and I appreciate that there are government constraints on budgets, but the Labour Party has so much power in the local lawmaking chamber. They declared a climate emergency in 2019. That gives them license to act fast and to act now. And they've done nothing. They still haven't produced the document that will tell us all what their plans are moving forward. How are they going to tackle it? And largely the reason why they haven't done it is because they don't understand what they're saying. It's greenwash. Yeah. And so it's inept.
It's inept too. Yeah.
You know, it's totally inept, and it's a crime. It's like for me, it's a social crime. It's a social crime. So I just encourage you, if you voted Labour, don't just have a look around. You know, what do the Lib Dems stand for? Have you spoken to the Lib Dem candidates?
I will be, hopefully next week.
What do they stand for? I'd love to know what they stand for.
I didn't know they existed anymore.
Ask her, is she a Tory? Is she a Tory or is she a Lib Dem?
But it'd be interesting to see what her view is on what you're saying right now, because traditionally the Lib Dems are dead centre and that's it. But they seem to be going way more left.
No, I mean, you can't believe a single word that they say. They stood on a platform at the general election before they jumped into bed with David Cameron, like that, right? And they stood on a platform where they said they were going to abolish tuition fees. They jumped into bed with David Cameron and they were hiked to £9,000, nearly £10,000.
Did they get anything done when they were in power, Lib Dems, do you think? I can't remember, because I remember all their promises that they wanted to
They
keep.
promised a referendum on the voting system, which is a scandal in itself. The voting system of first past the post is it doesn't work.
What was it called again? Was it RV or I can't remember Nick Clegg's dream, wasn't it, to have
it was
this?
STV. I think it was the single transferable vote. I don't know actually. I can't remember.
It was so forgettable.
I voted in favour. I did vote in favour of change to the electoral system because I think it stinks. But they got that. They were offered that as a referendum, but they no. Basically, they did nothing but stand up for a government that brought in the most punitive and horrendous budget cuts to youth services. Horrendous. They decimated our youth services. They did so much damage. That with the cuts, that particular government, that Lib Dem coalition, did so much damage. And they'll say, well, the Labour Party bankrupted the country. The Labour Party didn't help themselves by apologising for bankrupting the country for years and years and years to give voice to it.
And that trust, this is what I was trying to say to Jeff, the trust of Labour, what alienated me was what happened back then, but also since then, not being able to trust the word they say, because they flip-flop as much as Lib Dems do.
Yeah, exactly. And the Lib Dems soon gave up their liberal views and values when they jumped into bed with the Tories, and they've been decimated in Halton Borough. They really have. They've got a couple of seats now in Beechwood. Yeah. So which is where Jeff used to stand.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah.
I know that the person I'm interviewing this week is standing here in the same ward as you. So
Who they Lib Dem?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the one thing I will say about her is she lives in the ward.
Yes.
Right. So she lives in the ward.
So I'm looking
And
forward to it.
I think that's really important.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is.
one of the questions I'd love you to have asked Jeff is why isn't he standing in Sandymore where he lives? Because he doesn't live in this ward. So why isn't he standing in Sandymore where he lives? I'll tell you why. Because it's not winnable for the Labour Party. He can't win it. He lives there, but he's not going to stand there because he can't win it. And they were desperate for the candidate, by the way. They were desperate for the candidate, so much so, because nobody wants to stand there because the Labour Party can't win it. So much so that Mike Amesbury hoisted a tent outside the Queen of Hearts pub trying to engage with the community, which he should be doing.
Yeah.
And he was asking people, would they like to stand? Would they like to stand in Daresbury? And in the end, they've got Anna Hutchinson, who kind of works in London for the Labour Party.
Yeah.
But she's a paper candidate because she can't win it. But local, this is a big thing with the Greens as well. We're a smaller party, so we struggle with it. But eventually we will be having, because we are growing. People are joining us. They're leaving the Labour Party in droves. People have left the Lib Dems in droves after they jumped into bed with the Tories. But eventually we do want to get to a position where local people are representing local people. It's really, really important.
Well, the Greens are very powerful in localised areas, and then when that goes up to national level, it will get more and more pronounced. Because you're standing in, is it 3 areas or 4? Not you in particular, but the Greens in Halton.
Yeah, 6.
So 6?
Yeah.
Blimey, I haven't got a full round then. So name the names for me. Can you remember them?
What, the wards' names or the names of...
the names of the candidates.
Okay, so we have got Matthew Healy, who's standing in Birchfield.
Okay.
We have got Ashley Brown, who's standing in Halton Lee.
Mm-hmm.
We've got me, I'm standing in Norton North. Rich, who you've met.
Yeah. Ian.
Who is standing in Daresbury and Sandymore. Ian, who's standing in Halton Castle.
Yeah.
That's 5, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then we have got Tracy, who is standing in Huff Green.
Brilliant, good memory that. So that's 3 out of 6 I've got so far then for the Greens. So I need to get my ass in gear and get the rest of them. And I asked this to Jeff, and I've asked it to everyone. What is the best way of people to get in touch with you to support your campaign?
Okay, well, you've got my phone number.
Yeah, is that
pop
shareable?
Pop it up on the screen, not a problem. We've also got an email address as well, which is nortonnorthgreens@gmail.com. I'll give that to you as well, and so you can pop it up on your screen as well if people want to get involved. I'd love to speak to people.
Do you do like, I don't know, it's not surgeries, but do you do meet and greets? Do you get out and
I'll
about?
meet anyone who wants to talk about the things that are important to all of us, and that is, not just the green spaces that we absolutely need to protect, but also how better we can try and change the world for the future of our children.
Yes.
And also, making the world a fairer, cleaner, greener, more socially just society for where everybody has the opportunity to thrive.
Yes.
Everybody.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And I've absolutely enjoyed this interview so much. You've been such a great interview. Shall we meet again at one point? Hopefully at your victory.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll meet up anyway. Because I know that you. I don't know if you still live here, but you've lived here until very, very recently. Yeah, great. Well, then, let's meet up.
Yeah.
Let's meet up loads.
Because I do. I mean, I'm trying to be neutral as much as I can, but I can't ignore the fact that we're at this point now. Not just the climate crisis, but we're also at a point with Halton Council needs to kick up the arse. It needs an injection of enthusiasm.
Look, I very quickly just go off on one because I get enraged by just the very fact that the Labour Council, who supposedly got the goods on social justice, declared a climate emergency in 2019 and have done nothing about it since. There is no plan in place. They're putting together a document now. It's 2022. They're putting a document together now because they know that they have to. It's just scandalous. If you care about the people, if you want the best for your society, for your communities, for the people that you love, then you have to vote in a different way. And if you believe in social justice, if you want environmental protection, if you want a brighter, fairer, cleaner future for you and your families, for your children, for young and old alike, then you have to vote green at this election. Wherever you are, wherever you have the opportunity to do that. And join us.
Thank you so much. And keep tuned for any more interviews coming up. And yeah, let's hope it's a good one for you.
Yeah.
Thank you. See you later.